Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Have I Told You About This Show? I am Brad Comgenic. I am the guy that each week my mind takes me down a different rabbit hole, and I take you along with the journey. It's always fun. We've been to some really cool places. We've talked about survivor alliances and how they have changed the basic landscape of reality television, much less Survivor itself. We have talked about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and also the Wonka movie with Timothy Chalamet, and how they form pretty much the perfect symbiosis of movies that tie one to the other, making you almost wish the 2023 version was the first one that you saw. And then talked about all of the kind of theories and things that run amok in the movie that I love so much. Well, today we're going back down nostalgia road one more time. So we're getting close to Thanksgiving, and a Thanksgiving tradition that I always had was, of course, a wonderful meal with family. And then they would all go off to watch either football or sports or something or other, or mostly hang around and sleep. And my mom and I would then kind of sneak off into our what was called the living room at that time, and kind of the entry room into the home, and begin to put the Christmas tree together. And I couldn't wait to get that done. And the reason why was because then you'd get it all lit up, and you'd get to, by that time it'd be evening time, of course, and you get into your PJs, grab, mom would make a wonderful cup of hot cocoa, homemade, with tons of marshmallows in it. And then she would hand it over. What would she hand over? She would hand over the massive Christmas toy catalog. So, have I told you about this? The massive toy Christmas catalogs, more commonly known back then as the Sears Wish Book. And what you're looking at happens to be the one from 1980. It's the one I'll be talking about today, and I'm even going to share pictures from it with you, just as if I was looking at it myself all over again. The magical Sears Wish Book from 1980. You see, for generations, American kids just like me, the arrival of this Sears Christmas Wish Book was more than just a seasonal event. It was a ritual that signaled the true start of the holiday season. You see, each and every year, as the autumn leaves fell and Thanksgiving approached, families across the world would eagerly await this thick, 600-page catalog of toys, games, and holiday delights. Yeah, there were clothes and girl stuff in there and young kid stuff. We didn't care about any of that. It was all about the boys' toys, video games, and stuff like that, which were always put at almost the very end of the catalog. The catalog was brimming with, again, all these things, and it became a gateway to dreams and imagination. Children, including me and all my friends, would spend hours poring over these pages. With markers and pens, we would circle our most coveted toys and would craft our wish list for Santa, parents, or anyone else we could get to listen to us. You see, the 1980 edition of the Sears catalog stands out as a particularly rich snapshot of the era's toy culture. It captured the transition from the kind of the more tactile, mechanical playthings of the end of the 70s, all of the 70s to the end of the 70s, and then kind of ushered in the burgeoning world of electronic toys and games and licensed properties that would go on to define the 1980s. For example, the old sports toy that I had, which is a large figure of a football player, and he had a football helmet on, and he just stood there, and you took a football and you put it in front of his right foot, and then you would smash down as hard as you could on his head, and his leg would come up, and he would kick the football mostly across the room. And kind of the goal was for you and a pal to see who could kick it the farthest, and hopefully not hit anything else in the room and break it. Well, you see, toys like that were soon giving way to things like the Mattel electronic football game, or the little driving games that they had that were electronic, and more importantly, the Atari 2600 video game system. And they would go on to shape an industry, and they would make these more mechanical toys. A distant memory, really. So, what was this Sears Christmas catalog? It was often called the Wish Book, and as you can see right there in the upper left-hand corner of the screen there, that was called the Wish Book. And it was an annual mail order catalog published by Sears and Roebuck and Company. It began all the way back in 1933, believe it or not. While Sears had issued general merchandise catalogs since the late 19th century, the Christmas book was a dedicated holiday edition. And it featured toys, gifts, decoration, seasonal apparel, or just clothes, and anything anyone could ask for. By the 1960s and the 1970s, the Wish Book actually became a household staple, with its arrival eagerly anticipated by children and adults alike. The catalog's pages were meticulously designed with colorful photos and detailed descriptions and a price for every item. The toys section in particular was a wonderland. It showcased everything from dolls and action figures to board games, model trains, and the latest and newest electronic gadgets. The catalog, it wasn't just a shopping tool, it was a cultural artifact of the day. It reflected trends, aspirations, and technological advancements of each era. Again, just kind of a timeline here. It was first published in 1933, and it was just called The Christmas Book. It hit its peak popularity between the 70s and the 80s, with catalogs often exceeding 600 pages and featuring hundreds and hundreds of toys. As a distribution method, it was mailed to millions of households across the United States each fall, typically arriving, get this, in August or September. I don't know why. We didn't get ours till November. I think that's because we didn't normally go to the store, and we would only get these via mail. We were kind of the last people to get them, I think. And of course, it hit its decline because of the rise of big box retailers and later just online shopping. And that led to the catalog's gradual decline. The very last full-size Wish Book was actually published in 1993, with smaller versions and then actual digital versions appearing sporadically thereafter. You see, creating your Christmas wish list then became a ritual. For many families, the Wish Book was a shared experience. Children would sit at the kitchen table or sprawl on the living room floor like I did in front of the Christmas tree and flip through the toy pages with a sense of wonder. Again, these were all new things we hadn't seen. You know, it wasn't like it is today where everything's in front of you constantly. You can simply go to Amazon and see everything. Back then, you had no idea when a game was coming out of any kind or a toy. You had to go and see the things. This was like a glimpse into the future. So armed with pens and markers, highlighters, we would circle our most desired toys, sometimes even annotating the margins with notes or particularly rankings. We wanted people to know this is the first thing that I'd like to get, and this is the second thing, and so on. And it just made it easy for parents in turn, who would then use the annotated catalogs as guides for holiday shopping, either ordering directly from Sears or using the list as inspiration for in-store purchases elsewhere. You see, the ritual fostered a sense of anticipation and hope for kids. The act of choosing and wishing was as important as sometimes as the gifts themselves. For many, the catalog's arrival marked the beginning of the holiday season, and its pages became a canvas for dreams, a tangible link between imagination and reality. This book had cultural significance and a legacy like none other. The Sears Wish Books' influence extended beyond individual households. It actually helped shape national toy trends, believe it or not. And it introduced new products to mass audiences and reflected the broader shifts in American culture. The catalog's toy pages were simply a barometer of childhood desires, capturing the zeitgeist of each generation. From the cowboy and doll craze of the 1950s to Star Wars and electronic board games of the late 70s and 80s. Even today, vintage Sears catalogs are printed by collectors and nostalgia enthusiasts. Scanned editions and digital archives allow new generations to experience the magic of flipping through these iconic pages. And friends, you and I are going to do that very thing in this show. We're going to go back to this 1980 catalog and look at some actual pages that I can very vividly remember flipping through back in the day. So, the 1980 Sears Christmas catalog is available in high-resolution scans online, offering a vivid window into the toys, games, and trends of the era. These scans reveal not only the products themselves, but also the catalog's distinctive visual style. Now, the scanned images aren't as bright or shiny as the pages actually were in the catalog, but it had a bright, inviting layout, detailed product descriptions, and prices that now seem like, you gotta be kidding me, impossibly low. Well, let's take a minute and let's look at some of the things I looked at back in the 1980s. Now, it took all the way to page around 632 before you got to the boys' stuff. Okay, let's just take a look at page 632. Well, there we have it. Star Wars. Isn't this amazing? Here's a scene of the bounty hunters on Cloud. Well, no. This is Cloud City with the bounty hunter here, and one of the Ugnaughts and Lobot. You could get individual action figures. I remember having the Darth Vader Star Wars action figure holder. You had your Han Solo with the Tauntaun. You got your R2-D2, your Millennium Falcons, and your Star Destroyers, and all of the characters. Back then, each character tended to be around $6 to $9, depending upon the popularity. Amazing, isn't it? Well, that's page 632. Let's move on. Here's 633. There it is. A galaxy far away, the Empire strikes back. Now, I want you to check this out, friends. Here's the Millennium Falcon. You notice, I know the print's a little hard to read, and I really can't blow it up any more than this. But it's item number 12. And if we look at number 12 here, the Millennium Falcon, that was $26.99. Friends, if you happen to have one of these from the 1980s and a box, whether it's been opened or not, and it's complete, you're going to get a little bit more than $26.99 for it. Plus, hopefully, you got years of enjoyment of playing with the Millennium Falcon, taking this front piece off and seeing all the characters that were in it and pretending like it was flying through and around, the Death Star, all the different characters that you had there. They even had these awful plushies, I remember, of Chewbacca that looked like he'd been through a wild hairdryer. All the different characters. George Lucas was so smart about Star Wars. He actually said, I don't want to be paid for the film. I just want all the royalties. And he got all the royalties from every single $6.99 figure and $26.99, and they sold millions and millions and millions and millions. That was from Star Wars, by the way. And when it came to The Empire Strikes Back, he was able to fund that by himself. He didn't need any outside help for The Empire Strikes Back because of toys like this. Man, did I circle and circle and circle this. I wanted that so badly in 1980. What's up next? Well, we have a space galaxy toy. Imagination takeoffs and landings are fun at Matchbox's Skybuster Airport. So they had an airport here. Space Galaxy maneuver spacecraft down to attack the alien ship. This was one of these things where you could actually fly the ship up and down as it went circling around with this little joystick here up and down. Imagine what your imagination could do with a toy like that, because that's really all you had there. The video games that were like this were still on the horizon. And then I remember I actually had the Night Rescue Shoots Away by Gabriel, where there were people on this board that would rotate here, and you would have this helicopter that would then drop a shooted person, and you could move the helicopter up and down with this joystick here, and then you hit a button and it dropped a chute, and you can see these little red things that are on here, little receptacles. If you got your chute in one of those, then you basically scored, and then however many of those per turn, and then you give your friend a turn, and of course you'd beat the living tar out of them because you got to practice and they didn't. So you can imagine these types of games are incredibly popular now at like Dave and Buster's, where they have the big balls actually that drop down, and there are little like, I don't know, they're little rubber things that the ball will go down into that spin around. Just think, in 1980, you could have been practicing to win 1,000 tickets at Dave & Buster's. Let's keep going. Were you big into model trains? Model trains in the 1980s ruled the world. You can remember toy stores just had racks and rows of these things in the very back. They were so expensive, and the trains actually did shoot out smoke at the top, and they whistled. Basically, you just watch them go around and around. I'm like, okay, I don't see a lot of fun in that, but there were a lot of people that did. What's next? Ah, yes, the Night Glow Championship 1000 slot set, 39 feet of track. There were little slots in these racetracks that the cars actually set in, and you would take these controllers, and it has a little trigger on them, and you would start them at a starting line, typically like somewhere like here, and you would go 1, 2, 3, go, and then you and a friend would pull back on there. But you had to be careful, because if you went too fast in a corner, your car would fly off and you were dead at that point. And you would see how many times you could go around the track, and then things like this loop, or I'm sorry, these hills. If you went too fast, you were done. Your car would be flying off. Now, sometimes you wanted to do that. You'd come flying down the straightaway and around the corner, and then throw yourself up over this to see how far you could go. These things were amazing, but there were new things, and I'm going to highlight one of them coming up, called the slotless racers. And I actually had a Star Wars set. Friends, it was so rare I could not even find a picture of it to show you today, but I'm just going to have to describe it. But when I do, just remember what this looks like here. There were these little slots in here. That's why they were called slot car racers. And the car had a little fin on the bottom of it that fit down into there. And it when you hit the power, it would electrify that set and then move your car forward. You could play with these things for hours and hours and hours on end, especially getting all the, like, there were cars and semi. There were so many of these things. And these things were basically like dirt cheap. The cars were, oh, man, $58.99 for the whole thing. Think about that. What do we have next? I mean, we have a ton of these, right? Here's another set, the Night Glow. This one's a Jeep set that actually does crisscross, where you try not to run into each other at the crosswalk. Love that. That's cool. There's some more. Let's move on. What do we have here? Oh yeah. I can remember. No, these were for the big kids, right? Because these things were $249.99, $69.99. They were basic, like almost styrofoamish airplanes that you could get. that were remote controlled, and they would fly a little bit. And I had my brother had one of those. One of my brothers had one, and it was just amazing to watch him fly that around the backyard. He was really good at it too, by the way. What else do we have? How about the Go Trailblazing with a radio controlled off road buggy? Big wheels and sealed body. Let it charge through grass, sand, and guess what? Even puddles. Puddles. $48.99. Amazing. Try getting any RC vehicle for that today. Now we're starting to get into some bigger stuff. Let's see what we have here. Let's check this out. The Sears Family Game Center. Like this magic set, Party Magic. These things were all the rage. They had these little wooden maze things that you could get. They had these basketball games that were water, right? And the ball would fall down. Eventually, it would just kind of float down into here. You would press this button and it would shoot it up, and you would try to shoot the ball through the hoop to see who could get some. Because once you shot, then it would go down into your opponent's side, and then he would have to shoot. So who could get the most things, baskets in, and things like that. Look, these were in like black and white. It's amazing. It wasn't even in color. What else we got? Let's move on. Oh, now who didn't play Hungry? That's not Hungry Hippos. What's that? Flippopotamus. Hungry Hippos is over here, but these look like ducks. What in the world is that? Fishing ducks. Okay, so instead of Hungry Hippos, these were fish in the water, and you hit the thing, and the duck would go out, as you can see, like this one up here, trying to get the thing. So instead of Hungry Hippos, that's what that was. They had these little fishing like games where the fish would rotate. You would hit a button and go down. I remember this thing. You would pull swords out of this barrel, and this pirate would be in it. And whoever pulled out the one that made him pop up lost. And you would keep playing until everybody lost. There was only one winner. Board games, man. I'm telling you, they were so fun back then. Not that they're not fun. I love board games. I probably got over 400 board games myself right now. Of the new, like Catan and those kinds of things, and the newer ones. But these older board games, man, they were something to play. Let's keep going, man. I could just go through these forever. What do we have here? All right. Space target games where these were ping pong balls. You would set these things up and shoot the ping pong balls to see how many you could hit. Multiple games over here. These things were a waste. Everybody had one. Nobody ever played with it. They had like checkers and chess and stuff on it. Nobody ever wanted to play those things. Let's keep going. Okay, friends. And I'm going to show you this. This was kind of my number 3 item for the year. This was electronic vibrating football. First off, these figures right here that you would get, way more complex than what they seem, okay? Because the bases on them have these prongs on them that set on the field. And the way they were configured, sometimes in like a triangle, sometimes a rectangle, would force the character on top of it to move a certain way. So you had to learn, like if I want my running backs to run straight, then I don't want to use the triangle because the triangle causes them to move to one side or the other. But if I get the long rectangle, they will tend to move straight. So if I put the ball in their hands and I want them to run, then I do that. So what you see is you could get some really cool NFL ones that actually had the players, the real jerseys. These were hand painted figures at the time, and they look like your football players. They have the numbers and everything. Or you would just get these generic ones, these tiny little ones, right? Home and guest that look like more like a high school football field. And here you would it'd do the same thing, but you didn't want this. You definitely wanted the NFL Super Bowl electronic football game. And you put this little foam football on one of the hands, on your player, like you would put it in this guy's hand, like right here. Okay. And then when you turn it on, like you plug it in, you turn it on, this whole thing vibrated and all the players would move. Friends, some of the time, your players would just turn around and go and score a touchdown for your other player. Like you had no control over it whatsoever. However this thing vibrated and moved was just how it is. You just had to get really, really smart with your bases that you put the players on. Then your quarterback had an arm that you could pull back on like a spring, and he would put the football in his hand, and when you would let go, you would stop the game at a certain point, and then you would take that football and put it in his hand, and if you flipped it back and let it go and he hit a player with it, then the pass was completed. You would put the football in that player's hand and then turn the thing back on again and see how far he would run with it. You could play this for hours and hours and hours, for weeks. We had leagues going with these things. They were so fun. Yes, they still make these today. You can go get one of these on Amazon, and they are still NFL. They're still very, very cool, and they still play exactly the same way they used to then. I'll show you one in action in a video here in just a few minutes. You're going to love it. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, you like pinball? Well, you could get a tabletop pinball. You could get the great big one here, the disco electric pinball that had bumpers and things in it and a couple flippers, but you didn't really have, there wasn't any, it really wasn't pinball. It was just try to keep the ball alive as much as you could. Friends, here's what I was asking for. Gambler at heart. I can play slot machines all day long as they're not real and they don't cost any money. You ever play pachinko? Well, with pachinko, you would load this thing up right here with these balls. They were metal balls. And then you would pull down this lever and shoot them up through here. And they would hit all of these different pegs and stuff. And they would go through and land in different areas for different points. But the thing is, you wanted to try to get them through the middle here and let it go down through here. And then if you were lucky, come down in through here. And you would get the jackpot where more balls would spill down. Because then your turn could continue to go and you would rack up more points. These things were an amazing, like, gambling machine for young kids. And I had one and they were a blast. Unfortunately, you kind of lost interest in it fairly quickly, actually, because it was all just luck based. There was no skill at all. And the first few times you just get trounced by somebody that's lucky, you decide pachinko's not really my thing. But pachinko was fun. Wish that was something that you could still get today. You probably could. I'm not so sure. Let's move on down the line here. Your basic board games, chess, backgammon. You can get any of these at a value price, $4.79, by the way, for a whole chess set. Imagine that. Try to get a chess set for $4.79 today. All right, are you ready? Are you ready? It's time. How about an electronic chess set? Where the computer would make the moves. You didn't need a player to play any longer. You had a computer that could just beat you into the ground in 4 or 5 moves. But it taught you how to play chess. And it was only $319.99. Didn't have one of these, friends. Never wanted one, but I knew some adults that had them, and I watched them play. It's very cool. Alrighty, now it's time. Hold your breath. The Atari. No, the Sears video arcade cartridge, right? This was the Sears version of the Atari 2600. This is the one that I had. The old wood grain, right? Console attaches directly to the TV and turns it into an arcade of action-packed games. $154.95, and it came with this Target game. I'm not sure which one it was. It was almost like a shooting gallery type thing, and it had, I don't know, 50 games on that one cartridge. Really, the only thing that were these shapes would change, and sometimes you would be shooting from the top or the sides and things like this. This was the first game, and it came with the paddles, and it was the video arcade cartridge console. That was it. That was my number one in 1980. This was the only thing I wanted. Well, and if you get it something like this, you probably need some games to play with it, don't you? Well, here we are, the game cartridges. And right at the top, Space Invaders. That was it. I had to have Space Invaders. I had been to Aladdin's Arcade and played Space Invaders and loved the game. I couldn't fathom being able to play that game at home. No more quarters. That's what I kept telling my parents. No more quarters. I can just play it on this machine. I know the machine's $150. I get that. And the game, was another 30. 30, right? Imagine the brand new game. Licensed game nonetheless being $30. You had Outlaw, you had Combat, you had like Space Battle, Night Driver, Indy 500, Maze Craze, Snake, Chess, a 3D tic-tac-toe. You had putt-putt golf, baseball, basketball, football. Let's see. There's Adventure. Adventure was my number 2. I was so into like fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons and things. So Adventure had to be there. Here's Superman. The game Superman. Breakout. And this was called Circus Atari, where the clowns would go up and then they would knock balloons and things. There were so many here. And if you, on page 655, you could see the warranty and all this. But friends, this was only one page. There were probably 20 pages back then of all of these. Hey, how about this? Remember these games, the little electronics games, almost like this was a Sears Simon basically game where multiple people could play. $13.99. But here it comes. Here he is. 2 things. We're going to talk in depth about this board game right here. It's called Stop Thief. So innovative for 1980. So innovative. By the way, they just remade this game. A game company called Restoration Board Games made a new version of this that you can play. Now, it doesn't come with the special little crime thing that this came with. You play it on iPads or phones instead. But it plays the same way, and I'm going to detail all this for you. But, I mean, right here, and number 6 was Merlin. And Merlin was a game you could play forever. It would play tic-tac-toe with you. It would play Simon, where all these things would come. It could play different music. You could make your own music with these different. There was probably over 100 games you could play with just this thing. And then I remember the Quiz Whiz. This thing had books and books and books that you could buy of different quizzes, and then you would answer with numbers and A, B, C, and D here, and it would tell you if you were right and wrong. And then there was the electronic Stratego game. Man, this brings back memories. Just absolutely crazy. Here you go. More like electronic pinball, a little racing game. The Digital Derby, friends. Me and like 7 of my friends had this thing. You just controlled your car with the steering wheel here, and you moved your car left and right. And right here, like you can't do anything with it. You're going to hit a car here. And when you did, the little red light would come on and your speed would go down and you would lose points overall in the game. Absolutely thought that was so cool. You could get little digital bowling games as well. CompuBowl or Photo Electronic Bowl. I'm not sure what photo had to do with anything in there, but one was electronic with no ball, and the other one just you rolled the ball yourself. So as you can see, friends, I mean, remember the electronic games here, the early football games and baseball. Yeah, these were amazing. Okay, so that in and of itself is the Wish Book. And you just relived a huge part of my childhood. There were, again, action figures, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Barbie, He-Man. We had board games, Stop Thieves, Superstition, which we're going to talk about, Monopoly, Life. There were the creative kits. One of the main things that I didn't get to show you in here was something called the Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit, and I'm going to explain that to what that was to you here in a few minutes. Electronic games like I showed you, Simon, Merlin, handheld football. There were the slot cars, the Hot Wheels. For girls, they had Cabbage Patch Kids, Strawberry Shortcake, and of course, your building toys like Legos, Lincoln Logs, and Erector sets. And friends, here's the thing. Each product was typically under around $20 or less. I mean, by today's standards, you'd get 1,000 gifts at that, right? For what you're spending on a iPad or iPhone or something for kids. It's just absolutely crazy. Well, let's go into some deep dives right now, shall we? I think here we're going to get into some of the toys that I actually got as presents back in 1980 from that very catalog, and just walk you down some memory lane with me. The very first thing that I received was called the Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit. Okay. It was a creative kit, and what it did was allowed me to design my own superheroes and monsters, real monsters. It came with 18 double-sided plastic plates. You had 6 heads, 6 torsos, and then 6 sets of legs. So you could take a head, a torso, and a leg, and then you could make your monster, and then you could flip maybe the head, maybe the legs over. Now you had a completely different creature, and you could do it again and then color it. You got a sturdy plastic frame that you would put a sheet of paper over those things, pull the frame down, and then take this, like, I don't know, it was almost like lead, like a big lead crayon, and you would roll it all over the paper, and the monster would just appear on it, because it was basically, the plates they were raised up with everything that you would be like tracing almost. It was absolutely amazing. It was the kit was a Universal Monsters lover like me and a comic book fan's dream. It gave me the promise that I could create all the iconic monsters and heroes from my imagination. And all I had to do was mix and match some plates and put that piece of paper down, run that black crayon-like thing over them, and then I got to color them in. It was far too easy, and I was going to be a master of it in no time. Let's watch this quick commercial for the Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit.
We've all been staying up nights playing with this Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit. With this kit, your children can combine different chests, legs, and heads. Yes. They can color in scales, hair, or alligator skin. Very nice. They can make hundreds of monsters and heroes. Personally, I prefer the monsters.
There you go. The Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit. To use the kit, again, what you would do is select your head, your torso, and your leg plate, all of which were different, right? And then you would arrange them in the frame, head, torso, and legs. And then you'd put a blank sheet of paper over it, and then you'd rub this like crayon-like thing over it, but it was black. So it colored in all the lines black. The raised designs on the plates transferred then to the paper, creating this detailed outline of a character. And there was Dracula, Frankenstein, the mummies. There were superheroes. One guy looked like Aquaman. Another guy looked like an alien-like thing. And then the reverse sides of the plates featured textured patterns for adding scales or fur or other things that you wanted to as effects. And check this out. All of the artwork for this kit was done by Dave Stevens. He went on to do the film The Rocketeer. The designs included classic monsters, mummies, vampires, Frankenstein's monster, superheroes, aliens, and more. That modular system allowed for hundreds of unique combinations, encouraging creativity and storytelling. I can remember making, I don't know, probably 30 of those the first week I had it, and then writing little word balloons over the top of them and creating little scenes behind them and things. Really what made it special was the creative empowerment it brought. This just wasn't a toy. It was a kit that made it easy for kids to create professional-looking comic-style characters. even if you weren't skilled at drawing, because you weren't drawing anything, you were more or less coloring them in. There was endless variety. With those 18 double-sided plates, the possible combinations were nearly limitless. They had in their mind, if this sold well, they would make many, many more of the plates and sell them as kind of like add-ons. But instead, they went the girl route and they made some princess ones, and those didn't sell, and then they quit making them. This thing was durable. It was built to last. And believe it or not, I still have mine. The box is trashed. It got trashed, unfortunately, when my basement flooded. But all the parts and everything for the Monster Maker itself still work to this day. This Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit was a cult favorite among creative kids and future artists. Its inspiration inspired a generation to experiment with drawing and character design and storytelling. The kit's success did lead the maker, Tomy, to release, like I mentioned, similar products such as what they called fashion plates and pony plates. And it further cemented the rubbing plate format as a staple for the 1980s creative play. Today, on the collector market, you won't find these sets full anymore. They're always missing a plate or two, it seems like, or they're missing something, and they tend to go upwards of $180 to $300. Crazy, isn't it? All right, now let's talk a little bit more about the next item on the list, which is the vibrating football game. This was crazy. They actually had one of these set up at a toy store that I would go to, and I could just sit and watch this thing for hours. Believe it or not, something like this was introduced way back in 1949 first, but it didn't get popular until the late 70s and early 80s. The original price for this thing, if you got the NFL set, was $29.99. And it's a tabletop game that simulates, of course, American football. This isn't soccer. And it uses a vibrating metallic field and plastic player figures that are mounted on bases. See, the field is powered by an electronic motor that causes the surface to vibrate, which propels the players in unpredictable directions. How about we watch just a little bit of these things in action? They go everywhere. Look at these. Like, oh, you got a touchdown. And see, if your runner got touched by the other player, then you were down and you had to reline up all of your men. It took hours to play a single game. But you heard that. You had to keep turning it on and off and on and off. Each player sets up their team of 11 figures in a formation. The ball carrier is designated and given a little foam football that they put in their hands. And the offense and defense then are then positioned. So you could set your team up in any play pattern that you wanted. When that switch was flipped, everything vibrates and chaos ensues, and the players move however they want. But they do move according to the base that they're on and the configuration of the little fins that are on the bottom that actually touch the play field. Everyone had their special figure, the triple threat quarterback. He could pass, he could be the kicker as well and punt the ball. And the goal is to advance the ball down the field and score touchdowns. There were even little goalposts. That's why your quarterback could also kick, and you would have to kick the extra point. What made this thing special was its unpredictability and its collectability. I knew many, many kids who had this thing that rarely would play it, but they would display their football teams. They loved it. Some kids were hand painting their own figures. And then you could get the NFL licensing in it, and the set often included teams that were already painted in their official NFL colors. And this was a tactile game. I mean, it required setup, it required strategy, manual dexterity, and it was a social experience. You get friends who were dying to play. And like I said, unfortunately, if you played on a Sunday with, Sunday football was on and you started, when the game was going, it would take you as long to play a game as it took them. Sometimes 3 hours to get a game done because of the start, and stop nature. But it was so, so fun to play. These electric football games became a holiday staple and a rite of passage for many children, especially any kid that was interested in sports. Its distinctive buzzing sound and chaotic gameplay are etched in the memories of countless players. The game's popularity led to the formation of leagues and tournaments, and there's even a dedicated collector community that persists to this very day. As I mentioned, you can go on Amazon right now and buy the electronic football games like this. The game has also been referenced in pop culture, including The Simpsons, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and other media. Many, many television shows have had these. On the collector's market, though, the vintage two-door, TUDOR was the company. If you have a two-door electric football set that's original, you could have bought them for $30, and they go all the way up to sometimes $450, depending upon the team that you have and the condition of the set. And again, modern versions are still produced to this day. All right, now we're going to take a look at Superstition, the board game. So what was this? Superstition was actually a horror-themed family board game for 2 to 4 players. You could play it by yourself. I did. Ages 7 and up. The game board depicts a haunted graveyard path leading to that wizard's tomb in the center. Okay. So you would start either red or green over here, blue or yellow, and you would roll a dice and move along. And then you could have to eventually, if you were here and you rolled like a 6, you could go 1, 2, 3, and then you had to walk underneath the ladder. Again, remember, that's bad superstition. You don't want to walk underneath a ladder. And sometimes if you did, the cat would come out and get you, and that would send you back home. And sometimes it wouldn't. It just depended. It was all like, I don't want to say like random, but it was kind of random. How often you put there, and then you would have to set the cat back again. Then you got on the inside, right? And you would have to go through like this particular gravestone would be pulled all the way out here, and there would be a rubber band on the underneath of it. So when it pulled out here, you would pull it out here, put a rubber band from here to one of either this peg or another peg on the other side. See here how there's 2 pegs? So when I pulled it out, I put a rubber band between here and here, and I would hand it to my mom, and I would hand these things to her and all of these things that had the pegs, and I would say, set these for me and don't tell me which is which. And then I would go put them on the board like this and start to play. I'd play multiple players, right? And then as you tried to cross, I would have to pull a peg out. If I pulled the one that didn't trigger it, I got to go on through and try to get here to the tomb in the middle. But if I pulled it and it hit, well, then that superstition I had to pull off of the board because it was already done at that time, and I couldn't go back that way. So that was the game. It was all that simple. But there were so many of these tactile things, and it would scare you to death when you pulled one out, and this thing would come and knock your player just absolutely flying. This guy has a huge mallet in his hand, and it knocks you back through this mirror that breaks. And there are these 2 tombstones, and then underneath the ladder there. So again, players take turns rolling a die to move around paths around the graves yard. Along the way, they encounter these superstitions, mechanical traps such as cracked mirrors, black cats, ladders, and an open grave. Each superstition is triggered by choosing one of 2 pegs. One is safe, the other activates a rubber band powered trap that sends the player back to the start. Upon reaching the wizard's tomb, players drew a charm, protection, or a whammy, an obstacle for opponents. So when you got in here, if I drew the whammy, I would give it to another player, and they would get an obstacle that would even hamper them from going in different places. Or I got a charm which means I got protection, so I could use it on this to get out. but then I would still have to get out through one of these other ways here. The first player to return to their starting circle after visiting the Wizard's Tomb won. This was a hoot to play. My friends and I would play these again. I'd take it over to my friend's house, and his mom or dad would set up all the traps for us, and we would play. And then we would go back to them again. Can you reset the traps? We're ready to play again. And they would be like, oh my gosh, how many times are you going to ask me to redo this? They didn't know how much of a chore it was going to be for them, for us to play the games. You know, it had this spooky atmosphere. The game's theme and the mechanical traps created a sense of suspense and excitement that you just don't get with regular board games today. Again, since I normally played by myself, I asked my mom to set up each superstition trap for me. And that way I could always be surprised by the outcomes. This game had a huge cultural impact too. It was not widely known as, like, say, Life or Monopoly, but it carved out a niche among fans of spooky interactive board games. Its unique blend of luck and risk and physical traps made it memorable for every kid who played it. This game is prized by collectors for its distinctive theme, its mechanical components, and the actual rarity in which it was produced. On the collector's market today, this game can go upwards of $180 to $280. I absolutely loved that game. Okay, now I believe this is the final thing that we're gonna go over today is Stop Thief. Stop Thief was an innovative electronic board game for 2 to 4 players, ages 10 and up. Had to have 2 players to play this one. Players take on the roles of private detectives, and you're pursuing an invisible thief across the city block depicted in the board game. So the game includes the handheld electronic crime scanner, and that's what you're seeing here. That's what this whole unit was. You put a couple of batteries in it, okay? And basically, it would emit sound clues, such things as footsteps on the ground. That meant the thief was walking somewhere. So if you heard walk, 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 that means he walked 3 steps in some direction. You don't know which one. You would hear breaking glass. That meant he broke out of glass in somewhere that he was and then went out. And then you would even hear alarms where he would trip an alarm, and only so many buildings had alarms, right? All these things indicated the thief's actual movement in the game. Players had to use logic and deduction to interpret the sounds and to track where they thought the thief was going to be. You had multiple thieves that had multiple dollar values for like each one. Like one would be real easy to track because he was kind of a dumb thief, so he was only $500. But then you had a master jewel thief that was $2,000 if you could get him. But the thieves could actually get away. They could get completely off the board, and then no one got them. So everyone would lose. Successful arrests earned reward money, and the first player to accumulate $2,500 wins. The game also features sleuth cards, which are special actions, wanted posters, which are varying rewards, and play money. The device again was powered by a 9-volt battery and was a marvel of the 1970s and 80s, late 70s, early 80s technology. It provided randomized thief movements, immersive sound effects, and utter replayability. You could play this game forever. The thief could start anywhere on this board. It was amazing. Stop Thief was a crucial commercial success. This game sold out immediately everywhere. I was one of the lucky few to get it for Christmas, and I can remember multiple friends wanting to come over and play. And it would certainly influence later electronic and app-driven board games. Its blend of technology and traditional gameplay was way ahead of its time, and it remains fondly remembered by everyone who got a chance to play it. The game was actually reissued in the year 2017 by Restoration Games, and you use your smartphone, as I mentioned, in place of the original crime scanner to keep the price of the game down. Even the new game, if you get a chance to go out and get the new game, go out and get the new game. Stop Thief is wonderful to play. It plays exactly like it used to. On the collector's market today, because it did have the crime scanner, these things go from, I've seen them go upwards of 250 down. I've seen one go as low as like 120 once, but the crime scanner was in bad condition. And then finally, the one thing I don't have an image of um, was my Star Wars slot car racing set. So imagine, if you will, what you were looking at. This was a slotless um, game that allowed your cars to change lanes. Okay, so how did you do that? You would hit the thing full power, and your racer would go forward. And then if you laid off the power and then hit it again, he would stop and change lanes and then pick up and go again. Okay, then you could go on and hit power. One person had a TIE fighter and one had an X-Wing. And the goal was to get behind the other player and ram them from behind, which would knock their spaceship off the car, and then you would win. Yeah, tell me about how awesome that thing was. The cars would go so fast. They would most of the time end up flying off the track. You were trying so desperately to catch your other friend in their car. No, these cars they went the same speed. It was great. It was all about technique and how you played and how you could change lanes. You could see somebody running up against you and you thought, oh, they're coming so fast. If I can change lanes real quick, yes, I changed lanes and they rushed on ahead of me. Now I can change lanes again and bam, take their ship out. It was so fun. And it had a lot of Star Wars iconic imagery. There was this huge cardboard Death Star in the background. Didn't have anything to do with the racing, but it was very, very cool to see. This was Star Wars branding at its finest early on in the 80s. It capitalized on the immense popularity of Star Wars. Every kid wanted it. Very few got it. There were few that were made. That ability to change lanes added a massive new dimension to slot car racing. And really, it signaled the death for slot cars. This was the way they would go in the future. And again, the details on the X-Wing and TIE Fighter cars were highly detailed models, and they were collectibles. You could actually pop them off the cars and just show them, and they would be cool show things for the Star Wars lover. This Star Wars slot car set was part of the broader Star Wars merchandising phenomena that made George Lucas the billionaire he is today. It combined the thrill of racing with the excitement of the space battles, appealing to both car enthusiasts and sci-fi fans. The set, of course, is a prized collector's item, as I mentioned. You can't find these things anywhere today, at all. Alas, mine is gone. I don't have it. I certainly wish I did. I have lots of fond memories playing that Star Wars slotless slot car racer for sure. So, this Sears catalog is a powerful vehicle for imagination and for storytelling. Toy historians love it. Collectors love it. Artists and designers miss it for what it used to be. And we can only just wish something like this could come back again in the future. Imagine if Amazon were to put something like this together, even if it was in digital form. This Sears Christmas Wish book, again, was more than a catalog. It was a portal to childhood dreams, a cultural touchstone, and a mirror of American society for the time. The 1980s edition, which we thumb through today, in particular, it captures a moment of transition and innovation in the world of toys. From the creative empowerment of that Mighty Men and Monster Maker kit, to the communal chaos of electronic football, the suspense of Stop Thief, or the spooky fun of superstition, and the intergalactic excitement of the Star Wars slot car set, these toys inspired my whole childhood and piqued my imagination for the rest of my life. I hope you've enjoyed this time with me today, going back and taking a look at something once again long gone, the Sears Wish book. Let me thank you for letting me tell you about what my childhood Christmas list making experiences were like with that good old Star Wars Wish book back in 1980. It was such a magical time to be sitting by our well-lit Christmas tree with that fresh, warm mug of hot chocolate filled to the rim with marshmallows and gleefully circling all the things that captured my imagination. Oh, there were plenty of Star Wars action figures in there as well. The Mattel electronic football game, the Simon game. Those were huge favorites. But in the end, that Atari 2600 and that Space Invaders game, they were the number one item. And Santa came through. Now I get to have this same fun with my own grandchildren. The wish book, as I mentioned, is long gone, but we can still make wish lists on Amazon and other websites. But the thought is still the same. Looking at all the screenshots of the latest toys and games and seeing the look in their eyes as another Christmas is coming that's going to bring them joy and anticipation and hope. Friends, if you've enjoyed this walk back through where my mind took me this week, won't you consider giving this show a like and a subscribe? Also, please go down in the comments and let me know, what was your childhood Christmas wish list experience like? Did you have a wish book like this? How were you? If you're much younger than me, please tell me how you do your wish list these days. I'd be dying to know how a kid today would put together a list like this and get excited about it. You know, so many young people that I know, either friends' kids or just happen to kids that I might know from church or what have you, are telling me they just want Roblox money or Minecraft bucks or something like that. And I get it. It's those games stir their imagination just as much as the electronic football and the Atari 2600 did mine. But it just seems a little bit different to just get a card, doesn't it? Anyway, if you really did like this show and you've liked my other shows, the like and subscribe helps more than I could ever explain to you. Look, this show isn't about monetization for me. Never will be. Don't really care about it. Don't need it. This is about a passion. And your like and subscribe helps bring this show up to the eyes of other people. You can also feel free down in the comments to let me know what you like about the show, how it could be different, how I could make it better. Give me some topics that you might like for me to think about. I know the whole premise of the show is where my mind takes me, but my mind can take me to somewhere that you might want it to go as well. So hit me up in the comments and let me know your thoughts, and let me know what's on top of your mind that maybe we could talk about and share the experience. So thank you for your time. Come on back again next week because after all, who knows where my mind's going to take me next. Have an amazing week, friends. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and we'll see you next week.